The U.S. has a population of approximately 313 million people and has a military population of approximately 2 million. That means less than 1% of Americans are serving in the military. And of that military population, only a handful actually see combat. And when these men and women come home from war, what will they come home to? For some, they come home to a celebration. For others, they come home just to train to go back to war again. But the one thing that is for sure is that when they come home, they will be forever changed by war. Hear the stories behind two of these brave young men that have given so much so that we can live free.
James Simon, Sergeant.
Okay.
United States Marine Corps.
Okay, you were in the Marine Corps. What was your job, your MOS, while you were in the Marine Corps?
1371, explosives and rough construction.
Okay, like, for people that don't know, give them a general idea of what you did.
Lower levels of it, we were tasked with, in combat, blowing in place both foreign and domestic ordinances. During maritime humanitarian efforts, helping rebuild.
Stephen Patterson. I was a corporal when I retired.
Okay, what was your MOS while you served in the military?
19 Delta Cavalry Scout.
19. So for all the people that will be watching this that don't understand what a 19 Delta is and what they do, could you explain to them?
Cavalry Scout's basically the eyes and ears of the battlefield. We go behind enemy lines forward and we call back intel on what the enemy's doing. We also give their positions so we can call for fire.
Okay, how long were you serving?
Served for 4 years.
4 years?
Roughly.
Okay. What were some of your motivations that led to you actually joining the military?
As a vehicle. I played college sports, got hurt, lost my scholarship, came home, saw myself falling into some of the old habits, running around with some of the same people I was before who hadn't progressed in life, and just saw it as another way.
Okay. So when did you actually leave for your boot camp for the Marine Corps?
March of '99.
Before I went to the military, I was an Army brat. I have family that was military and retired military, and I've always wanted it. So my ultimate goal growing up was to join the military, but I did local jobs like construction and just random jobs to get me to that point.
Okay, so you say you were Army brat, so that was pretty much your motivation for going in the military?
It was. I have like my dad, for instance, he served in Desert Storm and Iraq during the invasion. And I have a cousin that was Green Beret. I have an uncle that was an Army mechanic. And my stepdad was Air Force. And I've just been around it.
So it's pretty much in your blood, pretty much.
It's in my blood. It is in my blood. And it will always be in my blood, even though I'm out.
Yeah. This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. CNN Center right now is just beginning to work on this story, obviously calling our sources and trying to figure out exactly what happened, but clearly something relatively devastating happening this morning there.
So 11 years have passed since this day, and many Americans still have the vivid image of the two planes crashing into the Twin Towers. The Pentagon set ablaze, and the images of the plane in the field. Thousands of Americans lost their lives that day. September 11th, 2001 would mark the beginning of America's longest war. Our brave young men and women of our armed forces would embark on a journey that would leave its mark on them all.
What went through your head once you saw the attacks on the towers and you already being in the Marine Corps?
Well, I was stationed in Okinawa, so it was, back stateside it was broad daylight, but it was, maybe 2, 3 in the morning back then, so, you had a couple guys that were up that seen it and started waking everybody else up, and, it went to that whole Marine Corps theme, train for the worst, but you pray for the best. And you know, worst came true, knowing that at some point we was gonna see foreign soil.
My first and only tour was October 2006 to 2007. I was a medevac in August 2007. So
Okay. What was the first thing that was pretty much going through your head when you arrived in Iraq?
I'm finally here, for one, but what goes through every person's head as soon as they get off the plane is, holy crap, I'm here. What now? Basically, it was just, I was scared to death. It's what I always wanted, but I was scared to death. So.
I was there for the original push. They called it the Race to Baghdad. That's when Breach Point West was actually negotiated, and the actual move up 3 different routes was chosen by the Army and Marines, which went pretty much from Kuwait up through Iraq to Baghdad.
Okay.
I believe it was, we went over December of '03, and war was declared, I believe it was March '04.
As a Marine, what were your thoughts about actually going over there?
That early, I didn't have any personal views. I mean, 'cause like you said, you train for the worst and you hope for the best. And going over there, I wasn't going over there for, you know, God, country, and Corps. I was going over there in support of the guys that I was going over there with.
Most people that have never been in the military don't really understand. You just mentioned how, you know, you go over there for the guys next to you, not for the actual mission. You care to elaborate about that a little bit more so they can get a better understanding?
Before any deployment, whether it be training or combat, there's going to be a workup done. There's a list of tasks given, a list of training that's done. And even before that, these guys you're living with are anywhere from 1 to 3 years before the actual deployment. And we develop a closeness, you know, a certain camaraderie. And not being, you know, politically involved or, you know, not being friends with the president, we don't know no real reason as to why we're going. We're just told to go and we go. And knowing that, you know, war is war, we're not going for the big scheme of things. Us being there is in support of the larger picture, but we're going for, you know, the guys that we've grown to know and love, the guys that we call brothers.
In battle, our troops endure more pressure and hardship than most people do in a lifetime. Here is where they fight for the man standing to their left and to their right. Here is where they see their friends die. Here is where they see innocent people caught in the middle of it all. And here is where the change occurs.
You know, some of these things, some of the experiences that people have had are outside the experiences that most people have here in States and civilian life. And so, yes, these, you know, some of the stories, some of the things are very different to listen to. And the thing that I try to focus on is what that person experienced, not necessarily what they're describing, but what was it like for them to see what they saw or feel what they felt. And the way that I feel about it is, to me it's an honor to be able to be there to listen and hear what somebody has to say and try to understand. And I just have a tremendous amount of respect for somebody who can go through something and then explain it in some way to somebody who hasn't been through it. And just to be able to see the resilience that's there. I just have tremendous, sometimes I'm in awe at how much the human spirit can be resilient.
So, you're in Iraq, you're scared to death. What were some of your first missions like going out beyond the fence?
Well, my very first mission actually was a dismounted mission. We dismounted, it was about 6 of us. We infilled about 3 in the morning onto a rooftop, and we was giving basically Overwatch. We were just overwatching the area, doing reconnaissance. And later that day, when it was daylight, we witnessed a in Armsdale going down, and we engaged with the sniper rifles and the machine guns, and it was our very first engagement, definitely an adrenaline. Shortly after that, a grenade was thrown over the top of the roof, and so it was a very exciting yet disturbing first mission. So we right out the gate we were getting it.
Okay.
A few things like we'll be on mission and all of a sudden we hear an explosion and we'll call it contact. We'll like contact IED to the north or whatever, and all of a sudden you hear them come over. That was us breaching a door. We're like, why can't we use C4 to breach a door?
Right. Or an AT4.
Or anything, yeah.
To do a night raid to breach the door.
But they were driving in a bongo truck. You remember bongo trucks? Yeah. And there was one that would not get off the road, so the special forces do a flashbang in the back of their truck. And if we would have done that, we would have been court-martialed or something. Yeah. So.
I remember.
I should have been special forces then.
I was up in LSA Anaconda, up in Beled, and I was watching a program. They're like, "Yeah, Beled, where mortar drops every single day." I'm like, "Yeah," in like one little area by the truck stop.
I've been to Balad. And,
Right, you know what I'm talking about.
I wasn't
It's only the truck
stationed there.
stop.
I wasn't
right.
stationed there, but where we were at Normandy out in Mukadia. We got hit all the time, right smack in the middle of our fob. And we'd go through there to visit or go home or whatever, you know, because that's the hub, you know. And all of a sudden, you hear like the sirens go off or something.
Yeah!
And everyone's charging for these bunkers, and I'm trying to eat, you know. And I'm out there in PTs, no weapon, like, what the hell y'all doing? And we would stop people and say, what are y'all doing? They're like, we're under attack, you know. And we're like, we didn't hear anything go off.
Now
don't know anything.
I'm on that post, and a siren.
Okay, so being over there, what were some of your more difficult moments, you know, just handling everything?
Well, we got hit a lot. As a scout, we also did a lot of escorting for EOD and important personnel. When we wasn't actually on mission, dismounted mission, we would run convoys, and the most difficult situation I was in was Memorial Day 2007. We got hit. It was on a rescue mission. There was two Kiowas in the air. One Kiowa went down. It's a scout helicopter. Two pilots went down with it, and we were on a rescue mission to recover the bodies as well as the helicopter. And we got hit on the way by an IED. Ended up killing 6 guys, to include my gunner. And I was the one that went in to retrieve the bodies. I was supposed to be in that vehicle, so I was still in shock the whole time, because I normally go everywhere with my gunner. And the most difficult time would be when I asked if we got everybody out of the vehicle, and they wouldn't tell me. And then I found out that my TC was missing. So I went back in, and I got really dirty, let's just say that, and come to find out he was back at the TC, so, or back at the TOC, back at headquarters, and it was a rough night, the scariest night of my entire life. We got hit twice that night. The first time was what got the Bradley, and the second time was as I was sitting down to take a break. I had another IED go off about 10 feet from my right ear, and of course it scared me to death, but I'm still in shock at this whole point. I only threw up once, so we were so thirsty because it was a rescue mission, and we weren't prepared because we were off work that day, that we had no water. We were picking up half-empty bottles of Iraqi water off the ground just to stay hydrated. And it was a rough night, and this was early, so it was really, really dark outside, and we had to recover that. So it was a bad day. It was the most disturbing day that I've had in Iraq.
Okay.
The incident that affected me the most would have to be the first. After leaving Breach Point West, which was the border of Kuwait, once going inside Iraq, we were aggressed from a sniper position, and outside of that sniper position, they had a small assault team as well that were using farmers and sheep herders as a cover. During that engagement, the farmers and sheep herders had to, they was in the middle of it, and there was a young girl who was about the age of one of my nieces, and I don't know if she dove for cover or if she was thrown to cover, but she went into a ditch that wasn't as deep as she thought it was, and she broke her own neck. And just knowing that someone innocent, was kind of put in the middle of it and taken away because of, war, that bothered me pretty bad. And then what I see the most is during mechanized convoy, the order was passed down that if you had to steer more than 7 degrees to dodge an animate object, don't. Because they were using people in the streets as a way to get you to the side of the road for ambush. Long story short, I hit someone. And, a few hours, maybe 300 miles down the road, I had to peel him out of the brush guard of my Humvee, and he was still alive, or in a state of living, so to speak.
Okay. So, after you lost your friends over there, how did that? What was your emotions at that point when your friends?
At that point, I didn't realize what went on. I didn't actually have emotions at that point because at that moment when it all happened, I remember Corporal Wallace just saying, "They're all gone, Sergeant. They're all gone." And Baker was actually still alive. He lost, all of his limbs were gone, and he was still hanging on, but he ended up dying on the chopper. But other than that, I was pulling security, and in my head, it was just survival just took over in my head. So I was pulling security, and there was people firing. We were under fire and everything. It wasn't too bad, but there was people firing, and our commander came over asking for volunteers, and I jumped right in. I didn't know what I was volunteering for. No regrets, because if I didn't do it, somebody else would have to. But he said we needed to clean out the vehicle because we couldn't leave them in there. So we had to go in and actually remove the bodies. Well, we got the bodies, most of them out. Summers, which was my gunner, was still in there, and he had a stabilizing bar that went, in the Bradley, the big round stabilizing rod that went through his back. Well, the only way we could remove them in time and without using because a cutting torch would have destroyed the body. It would have burned the body up, and it would have taken too long anyway. Sawing through the metal bar would have been impossible almost, because it was probably chromoly steel, which is really hard. So I had to take a pair of medic scissors and actually cut through his back to remove him from the rod, to free him up. He was in probably 2 or 3 pieces. But the main part there was his upper torso, and I had to remove it. And so I had to physically do that to him. So once we got him out, as we were removing him, I got a cut on my arm, which is just a little scar, but it's a big reminder of what we had to do that day. So at this point, I'm still in survival mode. I didn't realize everything I did until later. But it was still big emotions. Like in my head, I'm like, okay, so Summers is dead, Baker's dead, Alex Eve's dead, Ewing's dead. All these people are gone. But in my head, it wasn't a big deal. And I do feel bad about that to this day, because it is a big deal, and I realized that as soon as we got back. But in my head, it was okay. It happened. We gotta move on. We gotta continue. And they always tell you to put the mission first in the military. And that's what I did. That's exactly what we had to do. But you still don't mean you don't feel bad every day for having to put something before your battle buddies, And because I knew that happened, my mission was to clean it out, be done with it, and I had to be done with it. Shortly after we got the Bradley cleaned out, we were trying to move the Bradley because it was in shreds. It was, the whole undercarriage. It wouldn't work at all. It would hardly roll. So we were moving the 88 in to tow it home. And as it was maneuvering, I was resting against the wall. And right as my eyes closed, the 88 went over a secondary IED. And it went off right next to my ear. That killed Corporal Markham. Decapitated him. Threw him about 100 feet. So that was the 7th one that died that night. And so it was just a night of death, and that's what Memorial Day reminds me of every year.
So Memorial Day for you, celebrating and stuff, is not really.
I try to celebrate it. I don't want to forget what happened. That's the thing, is I do not want to forget what happened that night. It's just I try not to think about it, but I don't want to forget it, because I feel like if I forget what happened, I won't be remembering them and respecting them if I just forgot it. So the last thing I want to do is forget what happened. I may not want to think about it all the time, but I want to remember every detail I can of that night.
How hard is it to see fellow Marines getting killed around you?
That's part of dehumanizing. I mean, I knew going into it that if I worried about it too much, that it was going to take me off mission. I always knew that my time to mourn would be once I got home. I mean, it's never easy seeing it, but especially in a leadership position, you have to be the strong one. I mean, you have to be the one not affected. To answer that question is hard as hell. I mean, I see it shit every day. But the guys that are around me, they wouldn't have knew it.
Okay, so after that incident, did you see any personal changes in yourself?
Well, at the time, I definitely had to grow up quick. It probably took a week or two for it to all actually sink in and realize that we lost a pretty good bit of our platoon and our section, and I didn't have that friend that they were mostly my friends, so I definitely changed a lot, and I had a greater respect for life, and I appreciated life more.
After living a strict life of rules and regulations that are critical to survival, many of our service members have a hard time adjusting when they come home. Family members of the deployed service members are left to continue with their day-to-day living without that person being there. And many a times, people are forced out of necessity to take on a new role in the house. But how will the transition be once the service member returns home from war?
Well, I think for one thing, the rules have all changed. There's no checklist about how to live life and how to get through the different things, different responsibilities that people come home to. So the change in rules is not something that I don't think most people are necessarily prepared for. They've practiced one set of rules and one way of doing things, and it takes a lot to transition to, well, this is the way to do it, or you could do it this way, you could do it this way. You have to make some decisions to do it what's in the way that's best for you, and not necessarily keeping in mind what's best for a whole group of people, but what's best for you. I think the other part of transitioning home that is huge is the difference in defining relationships. That relationships on the battlefield are oftentimes about life and death, and about friendship being defined by laying your life down for somebody, or being willing to, and having the other relying on the other person or the other people to do the same for you, to never leave you behind. And when you come back here and you look at your husband or your wife or your buddy or your neighbor, if you try to apply those same definitions of what it means to be a true friend, what it means to be a good man or a good woman, and you try to apply those same definitions, you're going to be pretty disappointed, because there's not too many people in civilian life who will lay their life down for you, or who you would do that for. You may do that for someone because of how you might be trained, but for the most part, I think outside of somebody's child, most people would not, in civilian life, would not necessarily say that that's how they would define love or friendship. So if those definitions carry over to being married, being friends, they need some adjustment. They need some adjustment. There needs to be some sense of, okay, that worked over there, but that's not really a good way to define what a good friend is over here.
Being in gave me a way to provide for my family, but as well, there's some distance. I mean, war changes everybody one way or another, and that adjustment period coming back is always difficult.
Okay, so you just said how war changes people. What type of stress that once you came back did it add to your family?
Discomfort. I mean, because you go from, a strict order, a strict order of things, to coming home to maybe not so much. I mean, it's an adjustment. You're used to life one particular way, and you're having to readjust to, regular civilian life. It's difficult. I mean, a lot of people are affected differently.
Okay. How do you think it affected you compared to other guys?
Initially, I don't know. I'm not the expert, but I was able to dehumanize things to, improve my chances of coming home. And some of the guys that weren't able to do that looked at me as if I was affected. But at the same time, the ones that weren't able to dehumanize the opposition, I look at them as if they were weak or affected. But the other end of it, I mean, coming out of that mindset, out of that combat mindset, and you start to realize some of the things that you've done, some of the things you've had to do, and having to face it head on.
With you facing all those issues, does it affect your marriage or any way?
Oh yeah, it before war, before the Marine Corps, I was a difficult person to deal with, period. But the different changes you go through as a person, especially someone who isn't from a military family and doesn't understand, the sacrifice. They don't understand what's going on. It's hard on them as well as the service member. There's misplaced aggression. At times there's going to be some depression. It's several different challenges when you look at war, not just war itself. I mean, for me, war wasn't the hard part. A lot of younger servicemen, I tell this to, they don't understand, but I tell them, for me, the war didn't start until I came home.
Okay. Now, it's a well-known fact that in the military there's a very high divorce rate. Was that ever an issue with you and your family?
Oh yeah, I'm on my second marriage. My first deployment, my wife cheated. She blew through our savings. I came home, I fired her, and I ended up remarrying.
Okay, you say your first marriage. How long was that marriage for?
Let's see, I came home from school, and we got married that summer. So 96 to about 2004 when I came home from Iraq.
I think everybody comes home to a different situation. Many people come home and they have families. Some come home and they don't have families. Some have a spouse and children. Some have parents. Some don't really have anybody who they're close to. One of the things that I think our country needs to do is to find a way to better support military families, because they need a lot too. And when somebody is off fighting a war, deployed somewhere, their family's home trying to manage, and it gets restructured. You know, things get restructured. It's like somebody moves into somebody else's room. You know, if a brother's gone, or you know, the rooms may change, the roles change. How people relate and communicate might be different because of what role the person played in their family. And so the family gets used to a new way of operating.
Okay, so how long have you been with your current wife?
Since 2005.
Do you think that the relationship with her has helped you deal with the issues of being over there?
It's definitely a plus having a support system, but it's been a strain on her. I mean, she's had to see me, you know, in my ups and downs. She's had to be the one to wake me up out of some of the more violent dreams. I mean, she's had to be the one to feel that wrath when, you know, I have an off day. She's had to be the one to feel that wrath when things are frustrating for me. I mean, it's been a strain on her. I mean, granted, the service member goes through a lot, but that spouse or that support system, they get it just as bad.
Family life. The family I have at home, my mom, you know, my stepdad, my sister, and the actual family, basically. They noticed a big change in me, and in some effects, they're careful. They're more careful around me. They definitely worry about me because they don't understand. And when they try to understand, they don't understand. I have just different things. I appear weaker than I was because I'm not the same person I used to be. I used to be able to handle crowds. I used to be in church all the time. I used to want to help everybody, as many people as I can. I would want to do things, and I was more active. And now it physically hurts to do things. I can't handle crowds most of the time. I want peace and quiet. I'm a night and day. I'm a totally different person. I have memory issues, so it's different things. I have migraines. I have constant pain. I'm a totally different person than what I used to be. So whenever they see me, I can see the guilt, the hurt, the pain in their eyes when they look at me, and the worry, and that I feel bad because of that, because I had to put them through it. And I didn't have anybody really to call while I was over there, so I would call my mom every time I got injured, or I'm sorry, every time I got hit by an IED, which is 40 plus times we got hit, and I would call her every time, and that did a lot to her and really affected her. So I think she, in a way, has PTSD more than I do.
Have you and her ever talked about those situations since you've been home?
No, I will not tell my mom. I've told her a few things, but I try not to actually talk about it around her. I did get married since then, and I tell my wife, that's because she's easy to talk to, and she helps me through things. my mom would be more than willing, my sister would be more than willing, the family would be more than willing to help me through things, but I can't put them through what I've been through. So yeah.
I want to hear about the MySpace.
Oh my. The ex-wife, met her on MySpace, met her at Fort Hood.
Ugly and fat.
Yeah. So you know that she.
Oh, so you had a typical Army wife.
Typical. Yeah. Typical.
With a kid.
She had a kid. She was born and raised in Killeen, Texas. Okay.
In British.
Right there next to Fort Hood. So you know she's just used to the wildlife, the party life. Well, I didn't want that, but I wanted the damn family.
You wanted
and also
somebody to
wanted
fuck
and also
regularly.
wanted to
That's
live
it.
off out of the
lie.
barracks, off base. Me and my wife met in psychology, beginning of last year at some point, and started out we just became friends, then we became best friends. Then, well, we can't really be best friends and be in love at the same time, so we decided to start dating, and well, led us getting married. She's definitely helped me out. She heard me in class. I would tell all my stories because I've been through a lot of treatment, so I'm able to actually express my stories and tell my stories to most people without worrying about judgment or even caring about judgment. So she was actually able to listen to me, and she didn't have a choice because she was in class. So there was no hiding that in the relationship. So she knew what she was getting into, and that made me feel better.
How do your parents feel about the whole idea of you marrying this soldier, with you being brought up to be anti-military and anti-government?
They definitely do not approve. They're really unhappy with our marriage. And my mother's spoken to him a few times.
Uh-huh.
She kind of gets it. My dad has yet to say one word to him.
He's not even open to just a general conversation?
Nothing.
So how does that make you feel that your own parents won't talk to your husband?
Well, it's hard, I guess. But I also can understand their point of view because I was raised that way. But knowing him as a person, I wish that they would take the time to get to know him.
Okay, you ready? Oh, take a picture of me. I can't buy through this thing. Just chisel up the end right over there. Just nibble on it. Just nibble. Ow. Just nibble on it. Put it on the grill for a little while. Just put the hand in. Put it up a little bit. Just put the hand in.
Well, it's definitely new to her. She's growing up, she's never been around the military or any of that. So it's new to her to even know about what we go through or even think about how we are as veterans or even just regular soldiers. She don't understand it. She's getting there. But when, you know, she's more personal with me now. So she's around me most of the time out of the day. So she's around me even when I'm really angry. I won't even be angry at her, but she's around me when my temper's up, when I'm stressed. She's around me when I'm scared. So she sees me for who I am, not necessarily who I want to be. But she's around me when I am in my most vulnerable states. When, like I said, when I get stressed out, when I get angry. So she puts up with me. It's definitely not an abusive relationship by no means, but I saw a look in her face at one point when I scared her. Not that I was going to hit her or anything like that, but just my temper got up, not at her, but I just saw it in her face that it scared her because the person she loves was hurt. And it hurts me when I see that. And I was not like this. This is not who I was. And one of my fears, always, but it definitely increased when I got back, was I don't want to die alone. And when I see looks like that from her, or, you know, I always have that fear that I want to die alone because I want to do something to screw it up. Our marriage is strong. We don't have any issues in that field or anything like that. She swears up and down she's gonna stick by me no matter what, and I believe her. And I'm happy and she's happy. But if it wasn't for her being there for me during that time, and knowing that I'm not taking anything out on her, or knowing that when I'm angry, I'm not angry at her, she helps calm me down. Because if it wasn't for that, then I'd probably be in trouble.
How often? How often wouldn't be the accurate question. You know, how bad? Because it's something I live with and deal with every day. Some days better than others.
Okay. Now, I know you were talking about, you know, with your family and coping with everything. Has it ever been a time where your family couldn't deal with it?
Oh yeah, my current wife, we spent 6, maybe 8 months apart from each other because it got to the point to where I wasn't seeking the necessary care through the VA, and there was nothing else she could do. You know, the dreams got more violent. It got to the point to where I would wake up and not be in the same place that I went to sleep. And, you know, she encouraged me to seek the care that I needed, but I figured me seeking care was me admitting that I was affected, or admitting that I was, you know, one of the weak ones. And, yeah, it did affect. We spent, you know, quite a bit of time, you know, away from each other.
Now, you mentioned the whole idea of being considered weak. Do you think that's just a stigma that's associated with being a Marine, that you have to be strong and deal with things?
There's a lot of psychology in Marine Corps boot camp and Marine Corps training. One of it is that sense or that feeling of, you know, invincibility, that Superman syndrome, and you know, they build you up to a certain stature, and you try to maintain that stature throughout your entire military career, whether it's a couple months or, you know, a full retirement. But I wouldn't say it's a stigma, because holding on to, you know, some of the stuff that's taught is what kind of helped me get through.
How, like, what percentage of comfort level have you gained now, being back home a while now?
I'm still early off in my care or my treatment. As far as my comfort level, I haven't been comfortable quite some time. I mean, my sleep habits are pretty shitty. And like I said, there's just certain habits that I can't let go of. I mean, like, I'll walk into a restaurant. I can't deal with crowds. I either shopping real early or real late just to avoid crowds. Family events that involve large crowds, I try to avoid. It's not too many situations where I am comfortable.
That has to be hard on your family, you know, the whole trying to, you know, get together with family, but knowing that psychologically you can't deal with it. How does your family deal with it? Are they accepting of it?
Well, my dad's 82nd Airborne. He was a tunnel rat during Vietnam. He's been a big part of my healing, you know, my recovery process. My mom, having dealt with my dad during his healing and recovery, she understands. My wife, having my mother to talk to, tries to understand but doesn't fully grasp it. I mean, it's hard on her. She's been patient, I mean, thus far, but I know it's hard on her. I know it is.
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, I think that civilians and military people have to start to see it as a combat injury. It's got to be seen as an injury. You know, it's not an illness. It's not a disability. I realize we might not have the right words for it, but essentially it's an injury. Mm-hmm. And if you see it as such, then it takes on a very different kind of makes different impression on people than if you look at something as something that is a defect. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. And I think that my profession has a lot to do with changing that, and I think that civilians in general need to be educated about that, and I think it's also up to veterans to educate themselves and each other about that, because it's going to take some modeling from veterans who understand that they went through something, that there was an injury, might not be one that you can see, but there's an injury nonetheless, and that, hey, it's okay. It's okay to be different, to come home and be different, and to say it, and it's okay to come home and seek out talking with somebody. You know, just sometimes talking about it can sort things out. It helps you sort things out so that you can then, it's kind of like taking a pot of soup and stirring it up, and it all comes up to the top. And the way that it settles down can be very different than the way that it was before you stirred it up.
Right.
And that's some of what counseling or just talking can do.
There are a number of conditions that can affect a person after war, but post-traumatic stress disorder is one that sometimes can be very difficult to diagnose due to the many levels of severity and signs and symptoms. Many of our service members will go untreated for periods of time, either from them not wanting to admit that they need help, or sometimes it's some sort of failure in the support system.
Okay. Well, some of them might be visible and some of them may not be. But some of the common things that people experience with post-traumatic stress, and I like to drop the D. Okay, I like to call it post-traumatic stress instead of having a D for disorder at the end. Okay, because it's you know, it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation, and if you look at it that way, it's no disorder. It is post-traumatic stress. So it's just what it says. It doesn't necessarily happen right away. It's post. Okay, so it happens after. Post is after the fact. And it can be shortly after, it can be a few years after, it can be a few decades after. Right now there are Vietnam veterans who are in the retirement age. And as they retire and have more time on their hands, they're thinking. They're thinking about things they haven't thought about in years. Okay, and so they may first begin to experience some signs of post-traumatic stress that they didn't have before. So some of the areas might be, some of the very common things might be to have some sleep problems. Okay, because when you go to sleep, your mind goes where it wants or where it needs to, and it usually goes to inner conflicts, okay? Things that we either push away during the day or things that are still bothering us, even though we've thought about them. And so re-experiencing things that one has been through in a dream, in a nightmare, is very, very common. And so sleep disorders, sleep problems are very common. Either not being able to go to sleep, not wanting to go to bed, getting up in the middle of the night, waking up after having a nightmare, waking up hours before you have to get up. There are a lot of problems with sleep. Other kinds of things are re-experiencing whatever the traumatic events were in a lot of other ways. So if somebody comes into my office, I'm going to say, where do you want to sit? Because oftentimes somebody's like, I want full view of the window or the door, or I need to sit in the corner because I need full view of both. I need to see what's going on. It's very common to, especially with these recent wars, because here we are on a university campus, and you just look out the window here, and you can see cement, and you can see, you're maybe going to scan the rooftop, okay? And at the same time that somebody might say, I know that I'm here in Detroit at a university, And here I am sitting at the rooftop and I'm looking for snipers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm scanning. So that hypervigilance that's there, that's something that can happen at home. It can happen in the classroom. It can happen in, you know, wherever somebody might be. It certainly can happen driving in a car down the street. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because with some of the, well, a lot of the wars, but with the recent ones, you know, the IEDs. I mean, that's one of the most common things that that people have experienced, and where there's been just very traumatic things that have to do with that. Well, all we're doing is driving down the street. So because you have a similar kind of an environment here, you have an urban environment, there are a lot of triggers. Okay, so some of these things people can experience rapidly or multiple times during a day, or out of the blue, and sometimes there's really there's no warning. You know, it can be a sound, it can be a something that's seen, something internal, you know, something that's felt, something that you smell. There can be all kinds of triggers. I would say that one of the things to look out for is this, the sense of being able to regulate mood, being able to regulate frustration, being able to regulate anger, being able to, you know, regulate that feeling of grief and loss that's there. Some of those things are very, I mean, it's very difficult to do because there's an awful lot of emotion and not necessarily a lot of words or labels that somebody has to try and understand what they're experiencing. And so oftentimes there's tools that are needed, and tools that people can learn, you know, pretty readily learn if they look in the right places, talk to the right people, or practice the right things. Oftentimes there are tools to either be able to anticipate what a certain situation might bring and make a plan about how to deal with that. There's a whole lot of other things. I mean, that's one idea.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to go into any more of that.
Knowing the things that were required of you, and knowing the way, you know, the political atmosphere has been, do you think that most American people can understand and appreciate what American troops go through over there?
No. Because if they did, vets wouldn't be treated so bad. I mean, go look at the VA. And I'm not saying the ones that are abusing the system, the ones that maybe held on to an addiction, or the ones who maybe went in through the system after the care got to its current state. If it was appreciated, the freedoms we get as Americans wouldn't be shitted on so bad. And the vets that are here now dealing with what they've had to do wouldn't be treated as bad.
I'm more angry. I used to have a fuse pretty long that I could sit there and just take anger and just soak it up and not worry about releasing it. I have PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress, and it caused a big issue in my life because I'm changed to the point that the slightest thing will set me off, and right when I think I have it under control, something will happen, and it all goes out the window. I also have a traumatic brain injury. I was medevac in August of 2007. I got hit again. This time they sent me home with a traumatic brain injury, and so all this together, it's just it's really changed my life. I have to have strategies for everything. I have to plan everything. I have to have people that understand me in order for me to be around them most of the time, so that way they can at least understand me. So
how's your sleeping behavior been?
My sleep is terrible, actually. I have to take medicine in order to sleep. To even be able to close my eyes at night, pretty much, I have to take medicine. Again, as I mentioned before, I'm now married, but before I was married, I would have to go through every night by myself, and every nightmare I had, I was alone. I would wake up screaming, I'd wake up yelling, I'd wake up panicking. And so, especially the ones that are alone have the worst issue. So I've been on both sides of that. At night, I still have nightmares, but I have someone there with me now. But it's a huge issue for me to be able to have at least one night a week comfortable sleep. Whether it be 1 minute, one day the mattress is comfortable that I'm sleeping on. The next week it won't be because I'm used to, I guess, constant changing of atmosphere, and my body's used to that, and it can't stay with one setting on anything. So where like 1 week the medicine's working, next week it won't. I have to try something else. So sleep for me is a luxury when I'm able to actually get it. And I either sleep too much or I sleep not enough. I seem to never be okay in that field. It's definitely an issue now.
All right, so at night when he goes through his nightmares, how's that for you?
It's really hard because I know that it hurts him, and I know that sometimes it's really hard for him to wake up out of them. And the only thing I can really do is be there. I'm just hoping that it's better if someone's actually there with him than to go through them alone.
Okay, I know a lot of females, I don't think they can quite understand how it is to be the wife of a man that goes through those things. So, like, any females that may watch this that may have a boyfriend or a husband that's on their first tour, any advice that you can give them?
Be super supportive and try not to judge. That was where I made my first mistake, because I judged him before I heard his stories and before I knew him as a person. And that matters a lot, is when you know that someone's compassionate and they've done things that maybe they're not necessarily proud of, and you can love them anyway. That helps them through a lot of the stuff they have to go through when they come home.
Okay. Now, how is it on you hearing the stories and things that he did?
It was really hard, just because there are horrible things that you have to do when you're over there, and especially his stories about his friends dying. It's sad and it's awful and it hurts, but it also makes me understand him on a deeper level, and that helped me fall in love with him, is knowing who he really is.
All right, so being back home, would you recommend to any young men and women out here to choose to go in the military?
Looking at the state of, especially today's young black men, with the jobs being outsourced and not having the plants, a lot of these kids have nothing, nowhere to go. I mean, granted, my experience may be different from that. I would recommend it to them as a vehicle to a better life, a vehicle to paying for college, a vehicle to travel. I mean, there's going to be some sacrifice. I mean, anything worth having is worth sacrificing for. And yeah, I mean, I've put a few guys in contact with recruiters and had them shipped off, even after my experiences with the service, just because without it, they wouldn't have any other way.
Okay, and I know you mentioned college, and me and you both know that what you're doing, but tell people college life. How's that for you right now?
College is like coming home all over. You gotta adjust. Just like I had to adjust to being home, I had to adjust to being around family. I gotta adjust to being on campus. I mean, and really adjusting to school is a little more difficult than adjusting to being home, because I mean, you're in big lecture halls, you're around campus with a lot of moving pieces. I mean, my professors, they've even asked, pulled me to the side and asked questions. Because a lot of times you'll see me looking around, or I'll scan, from the windows to the door. Sometimes it's hard to concentrate because I'm doing a threat assessment, or I mean, hell, my first semester, I even had to excuse myself from a couple of lecture halls because I was having some difficulties.
Have the professors been understanding, do you feel?
Yes and no. Here on campus, they have the Student with Disability Service. And, really that's meant to help students with physical disabilities or mental disabilities. I'm not sure if they fully recognize our ailments as vets, as disabilities, but there's a process you can go through. But the process takes so long, like I'm still going through it. I've had some professors that I had to introduce myself to, as a combat vet, and let them know, like, hey, if I'm overwhelmed, I will excuse myself from the classroom. I don't want you to see that as being disrespectful. Most of them have been receptive. I've had one professor that without the documentation from the Student with Disability Center, he wouldn't work with me. But for the most part, they either work with me, showed as if they cared, or put on a hell of an act as if they did.
Okay, so what exactly are you going back to school for right now?
High-risk education. My background before the military was quite colorful. The specialty field I'm going into targets the demographic of students who normally don't succeed scholastically. Minorities, urban inner city youth, homes interrupted by incarceration, drug addiction, single-family homes, and even the new growing demographic of scholastically challenged students, which are the kids of combat veterans.
Okay. On your day-to-day life, I know you're back in school and everything. Is it ever a time when you're in classes or anything where issues from the military affect your work?
Every day. Matter of fact, I have a math class that I'm in now where as I look at numbers, I get them all mixed up now. I haven't been diagnosed with anything with, dyslexia yet. They're working on that, but I'm starting to get the numbers. I've been getting numbers and words all mixed up. So whenever I'm under pressure, I might be able to react under pressure, but when I'm doing the smallest thing that's like trying to do a math problem, I actually will see a different number than what's actually there. And on top of that, it requires more concentration for me to do those things now. So it's affected me even in school to where if the slightest noise is going on or the ringing in my ear that's caused from the explosions, it distracts me and it causes me to lose focus on what I'm doing. So among other things, that's one of the big things as far as in school. I get the words and numbers mixed up now.
Do you think your professors are understanding with your situation?
In the previous college I was in back home, they were very understanding. Here, they're definitely understanding. We just started classes, so I hadn't actually had a chance to talk to most of them. But the ones I have spoke to, they totally understanding. They're offering to help me in any way they possibly can. So that's good to know. I'm still me, so I'm still going to try to do as much as I can by myself, which gets me in trouble a lot because.
So now that everything is said and done, the war, Iraq war is over. Afghanistan, of course, we know is still going on at the present time. Do you feel like, after hearing the news and what all these politicians say, do you feel like it was all worth it?
I mean, nothing can ever equate or be worth the lives that were lost over there. I mean, I've had such a hard time, dealing with and communicating, my part in it, to the point where, my story itself, I wrote on my arm. I mean, nothing will ever be worth the friendships that was left over there, the fathers that was left over there, the brothers. I mean, it's, no matter what was gained from it, what was earned or what was taken, nothing can ever equate the lives that was lost over there.
Okay, so Almost done. You mentioned your tattoo. When did you start on that?
Actually in Iraq. Before leaving Kuwait, before going to Breach Point West, we had received Scud attacks. So we're going through the old, MOP games. MOP level 4, MOP level 0. Gas mask on, gas mask off. And that's the one on the bend of my elbow, which is just, a gas mask and a city surrounded behind it. And after that first deployment coming home, that's kind of when it started. But when I transitioned to Quantico, I was no longer in threat of deployment. I was training junior officers, international officers, and law enforcement. And I started suffering from some of the symptoms, but not really knowing what's going on. Hell, the Marines hadn't seen war so long. The care wasn't in place, so I didn't know what was going on. They didn't have the know-how to tell me what was going on with me. And so I started, documenting pieces of my story, in my ink.
Okay, and what does your story say on your arm?
A lot of pain, lots of it. Pretty much every piece of it represents someone that I lost. Some of the loss I witnessed, some of it I heard about while I was there. Some of it happened while I was stateside. Some of it happened since I've gotten out. I mean, like I said, and that wasn't the bad part of it. The bad part about it is, I mean, like I said, the war itself doesn't really, for vets, for us combat guys, the war doesn't start till you come home.
No. I personally know how it feels to lose friends over there. I lost a couple of them myself. Which one do you think affected you the most? I know I have mine that really affected me, but which one do you think affected you the most?
It's hard to say. I mean, and the embarrassing part about it is to, right now I struggle with remembering some of the guys' names, and that's where a lot of the guilt come in. That I should remember, but wasn't one that Allen, Lance Corporal. While we was out fighting and kicking down doors, he stayed in Kuwait. Not too sure how or why, but he did. And towards the end, we were maybe 40 days from coming home, and he ends up with us near Tikrit. 2 weeks from coming home, he eats it. Now the guys that I lost in combat, I'm able to kind of cope with, kind of deal with it a little better. But to knowing that he didn't even have to be there, and that was kind of rough on me. But that teaches you a lesson that war does not segregate. I mean, the guys that had been out there the whole deployment fighting or in harm's way, and he comes up towards the tail end of it and doesn't make it home. That was kind of rough for me because like I said, he didn't have to be there. But it is what it is.
Okay. You think that Americans should have even been sent over there to fight?
When we were there, yes. When we went over there originally, yes. I believe we've done good there. I believe we spent too much time there. But I do believe that we have done good, but it just kept growing out and growing out. And then to a point where everybody's tired of it. And then what was good-hearted turned into, why are we here? I actually had the privilege of flying back to Iraq last year with an organization called the Troops First Foundation, and they had a program called Operation Proper Exit. They flew me back over along with a few others to revisit where we were injured, where we were stationed, and actually allow us to re-experience it so we can get closure, because we were medevac. Well, in doing so, we were able to fly all over Iraq. We stayed in Baghdad, but we flew all over Iraq. We got to visit people, visit locals, and we actually was able to see the fruits of our labor. And it's definitely not the best place in the world. It's definitely not the cleanest, but I can tell you from when we were there during the surge of 2007 to now, it is night and day. We actually did something good there. And in my opinion, we've done good. There's people that done bad, don't get me wrong, but I was able to see Muqdiyah, where I was, in Diyala province, and was able to actually see that there's traffic now, there's cars, not just a random car here and there, but there was people out in the streets, there was life, there was community, they were there. And just in seeing that alone, where it used to be a ghost town, not because we were there, but because, you know, there were bad people there. And now to see families and just people living there, it was a good feeling. So to say, should we have went over there, I'm glad we did. I have no regrets. I don't care what people say. I'm not going to say we won, but we didn't lose neither. I don't think it was a win-lose battle, in my opinion. So.
Okay. So you said that you were able to see the things change and everything. Did that make you feel good on the inside that the things actually changed?
It really did, actually. I was able to get closure to know that I helped change. I helped someone for the good. And I got the closure I needed. And knowing that I got home, I proposed, I was able to actually hang awards and stuff on the wall. I was able to actually look at it as I'm done. Because I just re-enlisted for 6 more years before they medevaced me. And they ended up medically retiring me. And I couldn't do any of that. So my life goal was to retire in the military as a lifer, not as a medically retirement. And so at least I knew that I did something good in my time of service and not all bad.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the moral portion of it, because I believe a lot of people don't understand that with this war and even Vietnam, that we were faced with an enemy that used unusual tactics against us. So the guys that you see that are faced with this moral dilemma of possibly having to kill an innocent person just to save his or their battle buddies' lives, do you see them being able to come back home and actually, you know, deal with people? Because I know I've met a few guys that, because of those type of things, they said that it's hard for them to actually communicate with people because that's something that they feel like they have to live with for the rest of their life.
Well, I think that it is something they have to live with for the rest of their lives. But for what I have seen is that it all depends on what belief someone comes home with. If you come home, I've talked to guys who have said, well, this is what I went through. And I said, so what'd you take out of that? And I remember one guy said to me, he said, I saved a life. You know, I saved a life. So there was an experience that he was relating to me, and he said, I saved a life. Another person might have come out of that same situation, and if I said, well, you know, what'd you come out of it with? He might say, I caused a life to be no more. And so a lot of it really has to do with what message a person gives to themselves. And that may have to do with the circumstances. It may have to do with who the person was before they went over there, what beliefs they had about themselves before they went there, what beliefs they got about themselves or chose about themselves. One thing about beliefs is that we don't always know when they're forming. You know, when you go on a cruise, if somebody thinks that they're going to go on a cruise, they don't think about, should I do it because I don't know if the world is round or flat. They know it's round. So if you ever have a chance to go on a cruise, you might say, oh, sure. You don't think about, is the world round? You just act on it. And I think that people have beliefs about themselves. And the beliefs they have about themselves play out when they go through something. You can go through it and say, whoa, I did my best with what I had to deal with. Or you can come through it and say, I failed. And a lot of it has to do with what beliefs a person has. What people don't realize is that they can change their beliefs.
I don't actually have any regrets. Everything we had to do for a reason, and I live with that every day. Once I start regretting things, I'll start feeling sorry for myself. I've learned through time that I can't do that. A few of the only regrets, there's one definitely, the Memorial Day, the story I just said about the IED hitting us, one of many, but that day when we lost so many people, I actually was part of the 4 that dismounted. We dismounted because the driver of our Bradley, we were in the first vehicle, actually saw the IED hole that hit us, but before it went off, he stopped and told us that he saw the hole, so we got out, checked the crater. We were looking right over this IED and didn't even realize it. We were looking in it to check it, make sure that everybody would be safe before we continued on to rescue the pilots. And at this time, we still thought the pilots were still alive. We thought we were going to rescue them. So we were in such a hurry that we kind of cut corners, and we shouldn't have. Where we should have checked it more thoroughly. We should have called EOD, but we were on mission, and mission comes first. And in doing so, when we said it was clear, and I was one of the ones to say it was clear, as we drove and continued on, our vehicle set the timer, and it got the second vehicle. So if I would have been more patient, I would have at least tried to have prevented that without anything like that happening, and it'd still be here today.
So the average American citizen that maybe watched this video, do you think that they can really understand what people go through once they come home?
No. I honestly believe, like this video, will allow them to know that something is wrong and maybe have an idea of what they're thinking or what we go through when we get back, but that's about it. They will never actually know and feel what we go through when we come home. But if it wasn't for videos like this, they wouldn't even know to think about it. I think the only way someone could actually understand is for them to do it. And even just knowing somebody without spending intimate time with these soldiers, they would never even grasp the understanding of it unless they went through it themselves. But they became under attack twice, so we went all over the place there. So I think it was Balad actually. We went and we had lunch with like the commander and everything there, and we actually had to. We were in the line for chow. They made us go out to get in the bunker, and a lot of us are still the same. So we're when it comes to attack, we're not going to freak out when it comes, because we're there. We're actually comfortable, and so we're all just walking to the bunker. Like 2 of us, not me, but 2 of the other guys with us, they're missing legs. They're just walking to the bunker. We're all like, whatever, we're not freaking out. But you got the people that's been there, they're freaking out, and it was funny. And then we were on a C-130 getting to take off. I forgot where we were. We were South Iraq, though. I know that because it was way hotter, a lot flatter. I don't remember. They flew us all over the place.
Right.
Well, I was there visiting last year.
Okay.
And well, there's
How was
this.
that?
Huh?
How was that?
It was awesome. It gave us closure and stuff. So, but we were sitting there on the back of the C-130, and there was this hardcore Air Force guy. You know, the ones that sits in the back of the C-130,
Yeah.
whatever he's called.
Yeah.
Did you just say hardcore Air Force guy?
He's trying to be hardcore. Is what I'm trying to get at. Okay.
He's like
He's trying to give
He's
him
a-
his props.
he-
He's a combat veteran too.
He was a tad more hardcore than the Marine Corps, so that's not saying much. But I'm kidding. Go back, Axeman. And so he was sitting there,
I saw Jim Darcy
There you go.
slugging or whatever.
and he was all like hardcore, you know. He's like, yo, whatever. And all of a sudden, he turned from hardcore into the biggest sissy we've ever seen, because a mortar went off like 100 feet from the C-130, and I didn't even hear the thing go off. But he's like screaming like, "Get down!" and you can ask anybody that was with us, that would be the exact reaction that he did, and it was just it made our week.
Oh, just dealing with my old man being sick. They moved down to Florida a little while after I got out of the service, and he's been dealing with a lot of the ailments that vets deal with after coming back from Vietnam.
Okay, so how's it been going with, you and the family going back and forth?
Financially, it's been rough, and then having other commitments has been rough. But family comes first, and not only having that bond between a father and a son, but we have that bond of both being combat vets. So it's something that a lot of folks ain't gonna understand. I mean, get down anywhere I can, especially knowing that what he's going through. He's going through by himself.
Well, now, what's going on with him exactly?
Okay, he was diagnosed with advanced stages of lymphoma. Although it's one of the more curable cancers, he's had it so long that it was able to spread to both blood and bone. And they've gotten pretty aggressive with this chemo, and it's taking a toll on him.
Okay, so how are you keeping up, though?
Really, all you can do is be strong. I mean, the way the relationship works is, one in support of or being strong for the other. So, you gotta kind of bottle stuff up sometimes, kind of be the stronger person there, especially given me being stoic as I am at times.
Okay, so with everything going on with your father right now, have you been able to, take care of yourself and still keep up with your therapy and stuff?
Well, yeah. Yes and no. I've had to move some appointments around, and some cases it's kind of, there's not a little bit of time in between appointments, so appointments got moved around to facilitate me going down there, so just playing catch up, I guess.
Okay. So what are your doctors saying right now?
Mine or my dad's?
Yours.
I finally got the paperwork. When I started school last August, some of the classrooms I had some issues with, and some teachers were willing to facilitate, some were not, unless I went through the disabilities center on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to get some paperwork last October for school, and I'm just now getting it, like within the last week or so.
Okay.
Showing that I had, been diagnosed with PTSD, and that I was in fact a combat vet.
Mm-hmm.
And that the whole PTSD thing is now considered a disability in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow, so it took them a year pretty much to do that?
Yeah.
One of the things I think has happened is that, I don't know how it happened, but in Vietnam, I think that when soldiers came home, they were misunderstood, and people sometimes got disgusted. They treated them with disgust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes what happens now, mostly driven by the media, sometimes people are afraid. They're afraid of veterans. It's like, what's going on with these guys? And it's only because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like any other culture. The further away you are from really knowing the people in the culture, the more you can have kind of this profiling that goes on. And the closer you get to really having an understanding, then the more you realize that you're dealing with individuals who are part of a set of values, a set of cultures, a set of values from their own culture. And a lot gets missed. The men and women coming home who have served are coming home with experience, and they're coming home with leadership skills, and they're coming home with discipline, and they're coming home with a drive to succeed and a sense of I will not fail. And these men and women are going to come into the workforce, they're going to come into the universities, they're going to be part of social groups where they have so much to offer. But they may not necessarily put it out there if there's not an opening. And so if somebody can recognize that through some kind of education about the culture, then I think that that's very important to understand exactly what kind of training there has been. Because once you realize that, you realize all of this wealth of strength that's there, that that people aren't going to see it. People aren't going to see it unless their eyes are open to it.
Okay, so with the family support and everything, what do you see yourself in about 10 years from now?
Well, I have an uncle, my Uncle Derek. He's been, among other people, he's been another father figure to me. He's been one of the driving forces as far as education and the military. I've always wanted the military, but he would actually push me to complete my dreams, to actually go for them, and he would support me with that before the military and even after. As soon as I got out, he immediately saw that, well, that's a problem, let's overcome it. So I was out, retired, not doing anything, couldn't do anything really. So he pushed me to go to school, and he kept driving me to go to school. He would call me daily for me to go to school, and in doing that, I actually was pretty successful in my first degree in drafting and design. Now I'm moving on to work on bachelor's and then a master's. So because of him and the support of the family, I see myself in 10 years being an engineer in the mechanical / biomedical field, and my goal is to, in some small way, change the world. So, and if it wasn't for the support that I received, I wouldn't even be able to say that.
All right, so you're back home. How, with you receiving help and everything, how do you perceive your future from here?
I don't know. I'm a firm believer in karma, and some of the stuff I did in Iraq was fucked up, and I got to find a way to make good with the house. I mean, here on campus we got one hell of a support system. My wife's trying, and care at the VA is getting better every day. I can't really say because this isn't a challenge that I've beat or that I've won so far. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. I mean, I still go through periods of time when I don't want to take the medicine. So I don't know. I hope it's bright. I hope everything turns out. I pray that it does, but until I actually get to that point, I won't know. All you can do is keep fighting.